Okay, if a guy wants, again, remember, I'm arguing not from a philosophical point of view, but from just looking at the land. You know, then comes apartment houses, then maybe you come your commercial, and then goes on. So, if I were going to argue non-philosophically now, but simply good planning, as the government planners would say, there is nothing wrong with putting a professional residential building in between a commercial building and a single-family residence. Because you've got, in other words, you've got, if this is single-family over here, less intense use than over here, which is industrial, which is intensive utilization, you've got this kind of a curve. Well, their ability to put this residential professional, because I assume if it's going to be professional, that they're going to attempt to attract somebody into that office. I don't know what they're going to use it for. Well, it could be accounting, it could be law. I doubt if it's medicine. Could be chiropractic, could be dental, but I doubt that as well. But whatever it is, they're going to attempt to use the value of the high commercial traffic along Arlington Avenue as a base. Plus, they're going to live there. I mean, what is better, what is smarter than being able to live and work in the same building if that's your choice? I mean, that surely is ecologically sound, because you don't have to get your car and go anywhere. Okay? Now, how I would argue this if I went there in support of their use, okay, would be that given all the various different maps, all the various different planning that goes on, there is this ascendancy in utilization. And this is a proper ascendancy. Now, you see how many people you can sway with that argument. If you really got pushed up against it, you really got, you know, then you can get into the point where you can say, well, gee, you know, it's really their property. And then you could go on into the argument of, you know, gee, it's their property, and, you know, you're not really beating them over the head with the fact that there's something wrong with your mental and psychological makeup if you want to deny this guy's right to do with his land what he wants to do. You say, look at it this way. You know, we're concerned about an energy shortage. We're concerned about, you know, running out of gas. We're concerned about Arab oil. We're concerned about a lot of other different things. Does this make a lot of sense? And you can argue very persuasively without really getting into a heavy philosophical issue. That's one way to do it. Another way, for example, there's been great controversy raging over Griffith Park here of late. Griffith Park wants to be, they hired a firm for $100,000. They came in there, and they're doing things that's taking out the 18th hole in the golf course. They're abolishing another golf course. They're converting another golf course into 16 holes. Well, who the hell ever heard of a golf course with 16 holes? I mean, really, you know. But the interesting thing is, the very interesting thing is that you know, they're going to ban walking in certain areas, and they're going to do all sorts of things. It's just a mess. Well, there's a lot of support. There's a lot of support from the golfers who don't want to see a change. But the very interesting thing, the point that I'm really trying to make here, is that Griffith himself gave that land for Griffith Park back in something like 1867 or 1869. And the final hooker here is that the heirs, or those responsible for the estate, if that's that proper terminology, those who are responsible for, who have, you know, dwindled on down, either through legal inheritance or through, you know, natural primogenitor inheritance of the Griffith affairs, it goes back because Griffith says, hey guys, if you don't use the park the way I set it out, which was for the common people and the everyday working guy, then I'll take the God blessed thing away from you. See, there you can get up, and if you really look into the statements and the words that Griffith used in his will, or the way he conveyed the property of the city, you can really make a very nice point about, gee, isn't it interesting how Griffith, you know, retained control of his property and said that, you know, he has the right to, in the ultimate, to veto, because the family only back about 4 or 5 years ago vetoed another proposed use for the park. So that's the sort of thing. But things like this come up all the time. Many of you who own private property or maybe in a business maybe have gotten one of these things. And the average guy just takes it. Okay? They had a zoning board the other day meeting here of Los Angeles County. And 10 people showed up. I mean, they were going to go through massive recommendations and changes to the general plan, and 10 people showed up. So, that's the sort of thing that goes on. And you can go to those meetings, and the small meetings like that, if you go to a big, large public meeting, like had 7,000 guys down there when they threatened to cut health care. They had 1,500 people down there when they were going to do something about yellow cab. And they have 10 people show up when it comes down to land use. You're not going to get hurt if you go with 7,000 people or 1,500 people. You're going to go with the next 10, and that's when you can make your impact.
Yeah, I was wondering where those things are announced. Would it be a legal journal also?
What, these?
No. Well,
Oh.
or an LA, I think.
Well, they come out in legal notices. If you pick a particular area that you're interested in, if you're interested in what the planning board does, if you're interested in what the zoning commission does, you can go down or you can call them and ask to be that you want to be apprised of when they hold their regular meetings. You go down and go to the meetings, and they're fantastic. When I got on in Greene County. I got on because I knew it was coming. And there was the guy who first said to me, "Hank, you ought to read Atlas Shrugged." So you may have difficulty with this, but he said, "I want you to be on the planning board." And I said, "You've got to be kidding me." He says, "No." He says, "It's coming. We're going to deal with it." He said, "Get on it and let's see how long we can backwater." I was there for about a year and a half. We never got a plan approved. Okay? How many heard Harry Watson this morning? Harry Watson said, "What have I done?" Well, I held up a bill for 8 months. He considers that having done something. Well, maybe the situation is that way because, ladies, it's really critical. Really critical when it comes down to land use. You haven't got diddly one when it comes to what you want to do with your own private property. You want to make any external changes? Forget it. Down and get a building report. Or a building permit. Or you can go to Texas. But if you like California and don't like Texans, yeah. So, Carl.
Yeah. How do landowner suits fare in the courts in regard to zoning changes?
I really don't know. I don't follow them that well. That's another. I mentioned Bernie Segan. There are probably people that I may have slighted on that issue because there are other attorneys with the Libertarian movement that I know that are fighting, everything, homeowner associations and things of that sort. Sometimes they make out, sometimes they don't. Interestingly enough, there was an article also in the LA Times talking about the Sierra Club, and their liability insurance went up from $40,000 a year to $125,000 a year. The reason is the Sierra suit has been famous for the use of suits in the blocking of various different projects and the interference with the rights of someone else to develop this property. Even though they comply with good sound environmental planning, good sound ecological planning, as well as the business and economic aspects of their property, what we find is that the Sierra Club, has a vested interest in a view. The open space concept. So they bring all kinds of suits to block this project. And very often what happens is the developer runs out of time. He runs out of something else. Money. And so he drops the project. And they win. Not because of any philosophical issue necessarily. They win by default almost. They grind you down like the federal government. But the reason their property, or their liability insurance went up was because people are turning the tables. Some guy was going down the trail, and he got jumped by a mountain lion and had a few bites. So he sued the Sierra Club because the Sierra Club had put mountain lions on, or helped put the mountain lions on the endangered species list. And his theory was that if they hadn't put them on the endangered species list, somebody would have shot that lion, and he would have got chewed up. They dropped the suit, which was a smart thing to do, okay? Really. But you see, what it does, it just throws those guys in absolute turmoil. If I'm suing them because a mountain lion jumped on me, they're not suing some poor guy who wants to use his land. But a suit they did lose was a representative of the Sierra Club, and I'm not knocking the Sierra Club. I'm not knocking the Sierra Club. Anyway, no, seriously. I think that, they're very often, counterbalancing things. You see, the problem with the Sierra Club, as I see it, is that they aren't attacking the right issue. The reason, open space and agricultural lands and wetlands and wildlife habitat and all those things are getting ground up at an ever-accelerating rate is because you can't build in downtown Los Angeles. You got acres and acres and acres of unused vacant land down there, which should be used. And that's where the building ought to be going on. It just makes sense from a lot of different points of view. Anyway, so the Sierra Club, takes a vested interest, in our snapdragons. But what happened was they brought suit against this guy to prevent him from developing some land up along in the Monterey Bay area. Well, all of a sudden during the course of the suit, they realized, they being the defendants, the developers, realized that the only place where they could have gotten the photographs which they were using in evidence was if they were on the land that was being developed, private property. They brought suit against the Sierra Club for trespass. Okay? And they won on that one. See, if you're going to have somebody claim that an apartment house is a public nuisance, that an apartment house is a pig in the parlor rather than the barnyard, then you've got to resort to these infiltrating, undercutting tactics that they utilize. Because it really doesn't make any sense otherwise. Anything else? Everybody wants to go to the phone. Great. Oh, I got one other thing. Very interesting. I was listening to radio today. Talk about the atomic power people. This I thought was very interesting. Because we talk about the future, whether we're going to make it or not. But, no, excuse me, it wasn't radio, it was the paper. But there was an article by a very prominent man. When I tell you who it is, you'll recognize him immediately. But he said, we don't have any need for the new types of energy. The type of energy that we have today is perfectly adequate for our needs. Perfectly adequate for our needs as far into the future as we can possibly see. Strangely enough, in 1976, probably 1,000 people died from the side effects of utilization of this energy. Serious, right? You know who the man was saying this? Very famous. Thomas Edison. The year 1897. The power, alternating current. And with that thought, I'll see you at the podium. What do you do with that?